What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about the Nintendo Switch, because this week is the 3-year anniversary of its launch, and already this console has a very interesting history to it. I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly of this system in 2020. Now, some of you may know, if you've been subscribed to this channel for years, you may know that initially I was a little bit of a Nintendo Switch hater. The reason being that initially I just wasn't a fan of the idea of it. I owned a Wii U, and just to be perfectly frank, I didn't really like my Wii U. It just seemed like it had so many gimmicks. I didn't really like the gamepad, and most importantly, it just didn't seem like the Wii U library was all that impressive. So even as Nintendo came out on stage and promised that this was going to be the future of gaming, I was initially unimpressed. But over time, I was very much won over by it. So I purchased my Nintendo Switch day one. I actually got a launch console, and since then, I have become completely in love with this. I'll be honest, I actually play more on my Nintendo Switch than any other console now, by far. In fact, you can see I've got Switch Minis, I've got Switch Megas, I've got everything you could possibly imagine. But there's a big reason for this, which is that the biggest primary thing that I think created the Nintendo Switch, what launched it into this giant mainstream to now selling so many tens of millions of units, is one main thing: the hybrid console. This is the biggest thing, and I think the reason that it's found such success and won so many people over is the fact that it's put itself in a unique position. Now, I love my other consoles. I am obsessed with my Xbox One and my PlayStation 4 Pro, but they are, let's face it, they're things that sit in your house. They live underneath your television. They're things that when you're at home, you can play the biggest and best looking games in the world, right? I mean, that's the best part about them. But the Nintendo Switch, instead, it tries to treat gaming as an anywhere idea. Do you want to try and play some Doom? Well, you can play Doom anywhere. Are you craving a little bit of Final Fantasy while you're stuck on a train? Well, with the Nintendo Switch, it is possible. When the console came out 3 years ago, that seemed kind of like a minor aspect of like, oh, that's nice, but how much will I actually use it? It turns out pretty much constantly. Now, I'm a person who's very, very much in love with the Game Boy. I grew up with the Game Boy and Pokemon, and these have a very, very big place in my heart. And what's kind of strange is the Nintendo Switch, it feels like it's managed to go into that same spot. It's managed to be big RPGs and very, very serious games, but playable in 15-minute chunks, or playable just anywhere, anytime. I also think that this has created an interesting thing where a lot of game developers are in a rush to put their games on the Switch. Not just because the Switch itself is selling really big, but I do think that there's a lot of game developers who love the idea of people playing their games while on the street, or enjoying their experiences while they're at a train station or something. A game that definitely comes to mind is Golf Story. I am obsessed with Golf Story. This is such a hilarious game that's quirky and cool and sprite-like, and it was one of those first games that as soon as I started playing it on my Nintendo Switch handheld, I started realizing that this is an experience that feels so uniquely wholesome and fun and really, really charming, but it's also something that I like that I can just play on my Switch everywhere. It's kind of created this almost social aspect to gaming that previously didn't exist. There were online games, there was multiplayer games, but there's now this sort of community for things that come out for the Nintendo Switch. This is actually something I've noticed a lot. Nintendo fans have always been very uniquely passionate about projects. They'll do fan art, or they'll do huge dedicated speedruns to a game, beating it over and over again. But what I find very, very strange, but also I'm very intrigued by it, is that the Nintendo Switch generation has created these almost like pockets of fan bases. Maybe you'll notice this, but think about the fact that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, this came out 3 years ago now, and yet people are still playing it. People are still drawing it. People are still every single day logging in hundreds and hundreds of hours just to try and find that last little Korok seed or solve that one little extra puzzle island. I mean, even now, I'll admit, sometimes I just go on there to sled around on my shield because it's a fun game and the community is still active. I mean, this is kind of the thing that I think is the biggest reason that I love my Nintendo Switch, but every game they release on it is a banger. I mean, even if we're not talking about Zelda, think about Splatoon 2. You can still go online with Splatoon 2 and splat other people. Or if you want to jump on something else, like, of course, we have Mario Odyssey or Luigi's Mansion. I mean, these games are big. I mean, something I'm totally into personally is, of course, Octopath Traveler. This is such an expansive role-playing game with tons of little side quests and stories and interlocking chapters, and I can play it on my big screen TV here, which obviously isn't really big because I'm broke, but you can play it on a TV or you can play it handheld and you lose nothing. Every game ends up getting a dedicated fan base around it who's just they're so into the idea of becoming the best at the game, but not to compete. Instead, it's because they want to share that love with others. The Nintendo Switch, in such a bizarre way, it reminds me of like the early times of PC gaming. Way back in the 90s when you were playing something like Diablo, or if you were trying to play like EverQuest, these very primitive online experiences ended up getting these really tight-knit communities because it felt like you and these other people were sharing in a very, very fun adventure that the outside world didn't know about. And even though the Nintendo Switch is becoming very mainstream, it's funny that the community has managed to stay, in my opinion, very, very wholesome and very, very positive. There is not a lot of people out there that are like, screw the Nintendo Switch. My biggest fear before the Switch came out was the limited power. I mean, let's just kind of say this. Some people get a little bit upset. This is basically a powered-up tablet. This is something that you just kind of enjoy, and it has controls and stuff, but this is just basically a tablet. And so I was initially a little bit terrified that the games would be limited. I mean, since this is such a tiny machine with a tiny battery and a tiny processor, I kind of thought that the abilities of it would just be very, very limited. But now we have games like Witcher freaking 3 and Doom 2016 running on this thing, and pretty decently. I think it goes to show the fact that game developers are so hungry to find a way to optimize their games on the Switch at freaking any cost. But with all this good, there is a little bit of bad. And I want to address this too because I don't feel like the Nintendo Switch isn't perfect. It's fun, but let's face facts, the weirdest thing about it is still the fact that it is missing features that exist on other Nintendo platforms. Like, so right now, I've been playing some Animal Crossing on my 3DS, purple, because purple is the best color. The 3DS has functionality that the Nintendo Switch doesn't have. Most specifically, of course, there is the fact that there is still not a virtual console. There is no way to purchase and play some retro games that currently, right this second, exist inside the Nintendo Cloud. There is this huge database over at Nintendo headquarters in Japan that has the raw files for stuff like Earthbound or Mother 3, and these things absolutely could be put on the Nintendo Switch, but they just choose not to do it. We do have the Nintendo Switch Online service, which whenever they want, by their whims, they just give us a random 1 or 2 games every couple months, and I think that this service is good, but it's just so limited. I wish that all of this stuff was universal now. I wish that it was possible that every game that you could buy on Virtual Console on 3DS or Wii U or Wii, I wish that all of these would be sellable again on the Nintendo Switch, just because I feel like it's something that, as fans, some of us love retro gaming, and the ability to actually support these game developers, give them money for their hard work, even if it's old school. I like being able to do that, and I like being able to play my games anytime, anywhere. The other issue I definitely still have with Nintendo, though, is something that I feel like is probably never going to be addressed, but I would like to at least voice this concern, which is that they're still so random in their communication. I mean, this is the thing that definitely irks me the most, is that as a Nintendo fan, as somebody who actually likes to hear what's coming next, who enjoys the cycle of hype, Nintendo has been so utterly silent about random things. At this point, it has now been 6 months since we had a main Nintendo Direct. We have had a couple Directs that were like hyping up a particular Smash Brothers character, or one that was all about Animal Crossing New Horizons, but it's now been 6 months since we just had Nintendo come out on stage and say, hey, here is what we're doing in the next year. Now, I'm totally fine with them doing whatever they want with Directs. I'm not specifically complaining about the lack of Directs. Instead, I wish that Nintendo was more transparent transparent with what they're doing. There's so many times where we really have no freaking clue if they're making a new game, if they're coming out with a new season pass. There's so many times where we have no idea at all. I mean, it's been years since we even saw Bayonetta 3 gameplay, and they just keep occasionally peeking their head out to be like, the game is going good. I wish that Nintendo was more clear with the fan base as to what they're doing. I just wish that they would talk to us occasionally. That way we knew what was coming next. But this is all, I guess, small problems with a very, very good console. What do you think? Do you own a Nintendo Switch? What do you think of it now in 2020? And what do you wish they would improve about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. I kind of want to do one of these videos about the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 because they are now about to turn 7 years old later this year, and I kind of want to do a video that sort of like looks back on them and do like, because I bought both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One day one, and I kind of want to do like a PlayStation owner looks back, an Xbox owner looks back. If this gets a couple thousand likes or something, I'll consider it. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you very much. Have a good day, and play some damn games. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.